One of the critical things that we miss sometimes as educators is how our work impacts the rest of our society. We do not have, quote unquote, enough workers in the United States, and our population is going down. So that's causing a huge economic burden on our society. Economists have told us we actually have enough individuals, but only if we are directing those individuals into their highest and best use. So by actually giving the educators the resources that they need, helping tie those things together with our community, we're actually solving not only the problems that we have in our education system, but we're solving the economic problems for our nation.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is moving away from outdated methods for your students' career navigation system. Joining us today is Edson Barton, the CEO and founder of YouScience. Let me give you a little bit about YouScience. YouScience is a platform designed to empower students by providing personalized career guidance and aptitude discovery. It aims to bridge the gap between potential and purpose by leveraging advanced assessments to uncover individuals' unique strengths and capabilities. The platform utilizes data and artificial intelligence to help users identify their aptitudes, validate their skills, and connect them with appropriate educational and career pathways. YouScience represents a modern approach to career guidance, moving away from outdated methods and providing actionable insights for students and professionals alike. Welcome, Edson. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. I'm appreciative to be here.
I'm a huge fan, not only of yours, but also of YouScience. I love to champion it. I think you guys are doing the best work out there when it comes to any kind of navigation, really, around a platform approach. So keep up that great work. Really like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I like to just get a little bit, as we get started here, get a little background. How did you get, and tell us a little bit about your journey. How'd you get where you're at?
Yeah, I'll try to do the short version, but
Okay.
I started my career years ago at a company called Kids Voting, and it was a civics education curriculum. It was a nonprofit, and we just gave civics education away curriculum from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And the reason I bring that up is one of the main things that it did, it ran a study every year on students as they turned 18 and into about 25 and asked, why don't you vote? And the number one reason every year that came up was, I don't know how. I don't know how to do it. And that always shocked me because I guess I grew up in a family that voted regularly. And, I went to the polls with my parents when I was young, and it just seemed like kind of a simple thing to do. There wasn't much to it. But that kept people away from doing these things. And as the years went on, and as I started to get into different companies, I worked with Microsoft for a while at a company that's now called Certiport. They were a certification organization, and they ran a study that actually measured how students were doing in a classroom setting if you just made one change, which was put a certification into that classroom and as an outcome for it. And what happened was all the students ended up getting better. They had better scores, they had better grades, they actually improved their GPAs, they graduated at higher rates, all from that one intervention. And over the years, I started to put these concepts together and think, why were all of these things happening? At the same time, I started reflecting a lot on my own education. I was not a good student. I never felt like I fit into education. I didn't get good grades, so I'm not a valedictorian of my class. I was somebody that I always felt like I was on the outskirts of education. Years later, I came to realize that I wasn't alone in that. In fact, when you look at the studies, the vast majority of people feel like that. They don't feel like they fit into the education system. And so I started to take all these concepts together and say, why is this all happening? Why do people not understand how to do simple things in life that can cause such a huge benefit for them and for society, like voting? Why do so many kids feel like they're on the outskirts of education? Why does a simple intervention of putting a certification into the classroom create such huge benefits for students and for the educators.
Mhm.
Somewhere there must be something that's connecting all of this. And over the years, I found that there was something that was connecting all of this. It was as you put practical steps into place to help students or an individual, it doesn't matter what age, move from where they are to where they want to go as a goal. And typically that goal is career. But as you do that, all of a sudden the barriers just start to break down and people start to perform better. And so the way that I've termed it now, because it has such a tremendous outcome for individuals, is career connected learning changes everything for a student. And that's not an overstatement. Everything positive starts to happen when you start to connect career to an individual's education. And we can point to study after study after study at this point, but it's almost to the point where it's just a given truth that as you do that better, then you can make a huge impact. And what I found throughout my career is that's became my passion. I wanted to help people do the very best they could, no matter who they were, what walk of life they were from, wherever they thought they could get to. I wanted to show them the best path on how to get there and help them do what they needed to do that. And so that's what we've put together with YouScience. It's absolutely fantastic. I love what I do every day.
Yeah, yeah, you're really speaking my language. I wouldn't have known how to vote, to be quite honest with you. But like we had talked before recording here, I could not connect to the school system myself. And but you are onto something really really good. I really believe. And so with you science, I think it stands alone with that student experience when it comes to that navigation system. I think there's a huge navigation gap in our educational system. I think there's a huge experiential gap that relates to that, and an awareness gap around it. So when it comes to that navigation system, tell us about YouScience. You know, what is it? Give us a little background on it.
Yeah, you bet. I'll start with the broader picture is our main product is called BrightPath. And BrightPath
Mm-hmm.
is a collection of different tools that guide a student from wherever they are to the outcome that they want to get to. And so typically that starts in middle school and moves all the way through to your first career. Now, the basis of all of that, and every piece, I should say, is the way that I like to phrase it is pedagogically correctly chosen to help move a student correctly through this process. And it's really important that we catch all of those steps along the way for the maximum outcome. But it does start with a product that I found about 6 years ago, which is called YouScience. The company that I founded was actually acquired YouScience at that time in 2020 because it was vastly unique. What had happened, I owned a certification company
Hmm.
and still own that today as part of the process. But what that does is it's a trailing indicator of success. You have to have students find their way into the right classes. You have to have them take the right information. And finally, if they get that chance, they get to take a certification and potentially earn that to prove that they learned some skills. That's a trailing indicator. And so I was looking all the time for something that could help us at the beginning of the process, help students move properly into the education pathways that would best meet their needs to get the best outcome for them. Now, in that process over the years, Scott, I have tried every single guidance program there is known to man. It feels like I've taken hundreds of them. And unfortunately, they're all based off of the same basic technology or research, which is interest-based surveys or personality-based surveys.
Hmm.
And those are great tools. They're great research, but they are the wrong tool for guidance purposes. And here's just an easy way to understand that. All of those tools ask you questions. They're surveys of what you think you are. So
Hmm.
they'll ask you questions like, Scott, do you like walking down city streets or do you like walking in the mountains? Do you like building cabinets or do you like coding on a computer? Do you like this or that, right? And they'll ask you these series of questions. And based on that, they can discover your personality and some of your interests if
Hmm.
you know what those are. Now, here's the glaring gap. If I'm an inner city student, just as an example, and I've never walked in the mountains before, How would I ever know if I like to walk in the mountains or not?
Right.
Right? If I've never coded on a computer or I've never had a teacher that could teach me how to do that, how would I ever know if that's something I like? If my family that's around me, none of them are computer programmers, I've never been exposed to it. So interests and our personalities are a lot dictated on our environment.
Hmm.
And what happens over and over again, this is very tragic. Those tools are actually harmful for students, especially minority students and female students, because they reinforce a negative stereotype about myself.
Hmm.
I'll give you one quick example of that from my own personal life. We were talking earlier about the age gap between your siblings. I have similar age gaps. I'm the second to the youngest. My youngest sibling is just a year and a half younger than me, but I had a sister who was 5 years older than me, and then two sisters that were 9 and 11 years older than me. The sister in the middle, the 5 year older than me, she passed away when she was 13.
Hmm.
I was 8. So I was in first grade going on to second grade during this very pivotal time in our family's life when she was passing away from leukemia. And so
Hmm.
my parents were away trying to save her life, doing everything they could. And me and my younger brother were kind of left to our own devices. And so during that period of time, I started falling behind in school. But I didn't realize that. I was first grader, right? I just knew that things were not as easy for me anymore. Mom wasn't there to help me through those things, when I came home from school, all these types of things. So now come into second grade and I am behind in school. And I'm behind in school. And I remember very clearly one day where a young girl had graded my math paper. She handed it back over to me, like we used to do. Maybe we still do that. And all my answers were marked wrong. And she looked at me and said, Edson, you're not very good at math.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
as a second grader, I believed it. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't I? I was getting everything wrong, right? I wasn't catching up. I couldn't catch on to the concepts that were being shared, mostly because I didn't learn the foundation before it. So every new concept, I was behind. I was behind. I was behind. And pretty soon you just say, I'm not smart. School is not for me. I'm
Hmm.
not a learner, whatever it is, and you kind of give up. And that was me. Well, I hope obviously time has proven that I'm a little bit smarter than I thought I was back then.
Hmm.
But that stereotype stuck with me all the way through my college years, right? Until finally I broke free of that. Now, all of us have these stereotypes that we built ourselves on, right? Whether we were the sports kid, whether we're the art kid, whether we're the dumb kid, whether we're the whatever it is.
Hmm.
Females, right? We have spent over $70 billion at the federal level over the last 20 years to move females to more STEM, like following STEM pathways. And you know what difference it's made? Zero.
Yeah. Right.
Because we're not helping the young women at an earlier age understand who they truly are and what they're truly capable of. And so when it comes time to ask them, what do you like doing? These interest-based surveys, they say, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
I want to be a social worker because that's what they've been trained to think their whole lives. And so by the time they get to college, they're not moving into the STEM programs like we want them to. We have to recognize who they are fundamentally at a different level. And sorry, I went on a little bit long. Aptitudes are fundamentally different than that, though,
Right.
Scott. We measure aptitudes at a performance level. So we're not asking you what you think you are. We're actually just evaluating you based on a series of, we call them brain games, just fun little games that over time have proven through a lot of research that they indicate your natural true talents, what you truly are. Now, one thing people don't understand about aptitudes is that they're not dictated by your environment. They are natural to you. They're just like your dominant and non-dominant hand. And just like your dominant, non-dominant hand, you were born with that. You didn't develop that over time. So our aptitudes are just like that. And as we're able to identify for people their dominant and non-dominant hands,
Hmm.
then we can help guide them better towards the careers that fit them. And the beautiful thing is this: everybody has a dominant hand. Everybody. Everybody has dominant aptitudes. So we can tell every single individual in the world, you are good at something. You are great at something. You have the
Mhm.
potential to be amazing. And when people hear that and they believe it because they've experienced it in their life, they know that when they use certain aptitudes, they can do things better, then they start to come alive. And if you can guide them to pathways that are assigned or associated with those aptitudes, they start to thrive and they start to grow and they get along better with their teachers. They get along better with their parents because people understand each other better now. And now we can put them into classes where they're going to grow faster. And the rest is kind of history when it happens. It's magic when it happens.
Yeah, wow, what a story. What a story. I like to say in education, there's times where we just need to do the direct opposite. And I was going to ask, I really, really appreciate you, taking us to that story. And I'm sorry to hear how hard. I'm sure it must have been very hard, right, to lose a sister and to go through what you went through. But I wonder how many more of us, because I had some of the similar feelings as I've gone through the educational system. But how to flip and do the direct opposite allows us to build on positives, and that's really kind of what YouScience really sounds like it's all about. Let me ask you this. So I was going to ask you, why is the navigation experience so important? But your story represents, why a true navigation experience is important. It needs to be in our educational system. It shouldn't just be an advisory or a class. It needs to be part of us. What do you think the biggest barriers are in our educational system that's holding us back from allowing us to actually have this type of structure or system, ingrained or embedded in our system?
I've thought a lot about that, and I think the answer is this simple. It's a false sense of time, and meaning the lack of time. So in the education system, we have said, we have so many to-dos. In every legislative session, doesn't matter what state you're in, there comes new mandates for the
Yeah.
education system. And so there's just more and more and more different pressures that are put on the educators. And that creates this sense that we just don't have time to do anything except for
Mhm.
whatever is absolutely required by the law. And even though there are a lot of laws that are now lining up we're doing inside schools with the work or the potential career that you now have or should be having, the system isn't designed that way. The system has been designed to check off boxes.
Yeah.
So the number
Yeah.
one thing that we could change that would just dramatically improve the system is to say, what are the things that are so important that a student understand that we make those the top priority in our education system and everything else becomes second. So if I could go in and say, if you could understand yourself, student, right? We'll just use you as an example, Scott. If you could understand you as a student and you knew what your true aptitudes were, you knew where your strengths were, you knew where not your weaknesses are, but where you might have to put some extra effort into, right? And that's like using your non-dominant hand. You can use your non-dominant hand. I can use my non-dominant hand, right? This is my non-dominant hand. I'm picking up a cup, right? I
Mhm.
can
Right.
use it,
Right.
but I may need to practice more with it, right? So if my non-dominance isn't in numerical reasoning, that's okay. I just now know, okay, that's where I'm going to have to put a little extra effort in when the time comes for that. But I lean into my strength to build up my confidence, my excitement. Now, everybody around me, if they understand what my true aptitudes are, now I can help build lesson plans around you. I can help build pathways for
Mhm.
you. I can start to understand which teachers might be best suited for you to help you grow better. I've just given you as educators and you as a student and your parents a wealth of information that can potentially help you set the best setting for you for the rest of your life. Now, that doesn't mean you can't change and pivot, but you now know better on which way to grow. And there are a handful of these things that we as a society, we know make a big difference, but we don't give enough time to those.
Right.
If I get asked this question all the time because the aptitude assessment's not short. And to do it all is about an hour and 20 minutes to get the full amount of
Mhm.
information for you as an individual. And people say, well, that's too long. And my question is always back, if you could find something that would improve GPAs, would improve graduation rates, would improve the
Right.
social and emotional learning of a student through their entire life, would improve the education outcomes going into college, meaning college enrollments, would improve college graduation rates, would improve first year earning potential, would improve job satisfaction, wouldn't you want to do that?
Right. Right.
If it took a week, if it took a semester, but you could get those types of outcomes, wouldn't that be worth it? And I never get a no to that statement,
Right.
but I get, well, but that assessment's too long.
Mm.
You're just like, well, I don't know what to tell you in that case, other than I'm sorry for your students, right? Because your students are missing an opportunity to get all of those outcomes. And all because we don't want to dedicate enough time to that. And so that's the number one thing is if we could dedicate the right amount of time to doing the right things in education, we would get vastly better outcomes. One of the other I know is close to your heart is career exploration, right? We ask kids when they're young, and this is the wrong question to ask, what are you interested in?
Right.
Right? And kids are going to tell you the answer because of their environment, right? I want to be a basketball player. I want to be a YouTube star. I want to be a cheerleader. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a doctor, right? None of those are bad things, but the kids only tell you about 5, 6, 10 careers that they want to be. But if we could early on explore different careers with these kids, and especially if we could use their aptitudes to guide them into different types of career exploration,
Mm.
the benefits we know as educators, the benefits are enormous by doing that. Because once a kid finds that thing that they get excited about, that meets who they are, now there's no stopping that kid,
Yeah,
right?
100%
They'll
right.
walk through
Yeah.
walls. So why don't we do more of that, right? Yes, reading's important. Yes, math is important. Those are important. But there is plenty of time for career exploration, and we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And it has such a huge benefit. I mean, those are just two
Yeah.
things, of course, that I'm passionate about, but there are others that we could do that are just basic that we know as a society make a difference, and we don't spend enough time on them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, 100%. And some of the work we've been doing with districts at that teacher level with the student at the student level, you're 100% right on. Students will re-engage in the learning system through this process, knowing more about themselves. It allows us to plan differently as educators. And we're seeing teachers rejuvenated, and we're seeing students reinvesting. At the
Yeah.
front end, it's hard for them because they're so conditioned in our educational system to be handed that information and then turn around and they're expected to hand it back. But when they can see something they strive towards, like you said perfectly, they'll want to learn more about math and how to write and read if they're striving towards something. Wow, yeah, agreed 100%.
I
100.
think one of the classic, kind of stories that we tell in career and technical education is
Mhm.
there's this terrible misnomer about, academic kids and vocational kids, which we just know is not true. Every kid is a vocational
Right.
kid. Every kid is an academic kid if you find the right vocation and the right academics to fit.
Yeah.
But the stereotype here, the example that we give all the time, and it's true, is you have this kid who's dropping out of math, he can barely make it. And then all of a sudden she goes into, and you say, well, let's get you into this construction program or this welding program or whatever it is. And they get into it, and pretty soon they're doing complex geometry,
Mhm.
complex algebra, complex other math. And all of a sudden they're like, Yeah, I'm just doing it because it's part of how I build this wall, right? I got to do this little simple calculation. And as soon as you point it out, you're doing math, you're doing high end math. And they're like, well, wait a second. I didn't know that. I thought I was a dumb person, right? And their teachers are like, did you see what just
Mhm.
happened there?
Mhm.
Right. And all of a sudden we're all shocked at that when it's just what you just said. We're just putting it into context and we're helping them see something of
Yeah.
value there, and then it comes alive. It's that value proposition. Help students see the value of what they're doing, and yeah, of course they're going to do better.
Yeah. Value and their purpose, right? I was asked, I was asked on a podcast I was on, when did I find my purpose in my career? And, I kind of had to think a little bit. And my true connection probably has come in the last, maybe 10 years where I'm really finding my purpose. And I just think we could see that so much earlier, with our students. And I really do. I believe like YouScience and kind of that secret sauce that you have happening, I think is a true connection for students. With that, I know that there are opportunities and a lot of different connections within your platform. Talk a little bit about that student experience. Talk a little bit about what ignites a student's interest once they invest and once they're deep into it.
Yeah. Well, as you start to, after you come out of that aptitude assessment, and again, it's just these series of brain games, and you get this wealth of information about who you are and how you tick and a little bit more. But
Mhm.
then we directly in the platform, we link to careers that are best aligned to your aptitudes. And not only do we just give you a list of these careers, we rank them for you from, these are your top ones. And we don't say this is one, two, three, four,
Mhm.
but here's your high aptitude fit ones. Here's your middle aptitude fits, and here's ones that aren't quite a very good fit for you. But the magic in there is that in that process, we show this really simple graph. It's little bubble charts, and we show how your aptitudes line up with the norm population for that career, and we show how close you
Mhm.
align with that. So now a student, let's say that they're off on one of their aptitudes, they're off quite a bit for a particular career. Let's say that, I was supposed to be a curator for a museum. Say that was a high aptitude for me. But my entire life, I wanted to be an astronaut, which are very different types of careers.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that I can't be an astronaut. I can now come in and on that astronaut row for the aptitudes, I can see how my aptitudes diverge from those of the norm population of an astronaut. And
Mhm.
now I know, okay, in this area, I'm going to have to make up, extra effort, I guess. Right. And I think of a basketball player all the time when I think about this. And, I grew up in the era of John Stockton. And so John Stockton was my
Mhm.
basketball hero. But, he didn't come naturally born knowing how to bounce the ball with his non-dominant hand. But what John Stockton did better than almost anybody else in the league was that he practiced with his non-dominant hand constantly because he knew that he couldn't be the basketball player that he wanted to be if he only practiced with his dominant hand. And so he worked that non-dominant hand constantly. He bounced the ball with it. He did different things to strengthen that memory to where it became equivalent to his dominant hand almost, right? And so if I want to be an astronaut, I now know how. I know now why I am struggling in an area with being an astronaut and where I'm going to excel with being an
Mhm.
astronaut. And now I can go and find mentors or I can find other help that I need to build myself up. If that's my goal, then I can do that. And so I think that that's part of the process is we give these students this ability to see themselves in the future, and we give them the ability to see how it all connects together, and that becomes really magic for an individual. Then we take it a step further where we actually show companies that are in their local area, hopefully, that want people like you, right, that have those types of aptitudes.
Mhm.
And that's empowering for students. And the only reason why I say I hope that you have a business in your area is because sometimes the local area just hasn't gone and gathered the
Right.
businesses to put into the system yet. But if those businesses are in the system, then every student is being told, okay, I have certain aptitudes. I know this positively now. I know that I have the capability of doing some types of careers excellently. So that gives
Mhm.
me encouragement. And I know that there are people out there who want me. There are businesses who want what I have to give. That's empowering to people.
Mhm.
Everybody in our society, every human wants to be loved. That's a basic human need.
Mhm.
Well, we just told people you've got something important and you're needed. What a powerful combination. Now we take all of that and then we say, okay, let's put you on a path to get to that goal. If you want a job with that particular company or you want that type of outcome, what type of education do you need now? Let's line that up for you. And so we
Mhm.
have a courseware planner through high school to help you line up your plan for your next 4 years. And what post-secondary options do you want? Not everybody needs to go to college, right? We know
Right.
that, but I believe that everybody needs post-secondary education. Now, that may mean something different. For example, if I want to be a front-end web developer, I do not need to go to Stanford to be a front-end web developer. I probably can go to a boot camp that is 3 months, 4 months, and I can come out with high skills of being a web developer. If I want to be an AI researcher, I probably need to go to a top-tier computer science school to be able to do that. But those are, now I know my path. I know how to get there. I know the outcomes. And now I can line my future up. And if I deviate from that course, that's okay. I now know how to come back and I know how to get off and I can see pathways that are adjacent to it. And I can move myself in different directions to get to the goals that I have. Nobody should feel lost and alone. And I guess that kind of goes back to that early knowing how to vote kind of thing. Is if we give people a pathway and show them the steps to get there, then again, they're empowered to do much more than they ever could before.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, very, very well said. One of the things that I have heard you talk a little bit about is that like your aptitudes don't change, like your character traits, your characteristics, who you are is who you are. They don't really change. Talk a little bit about this, but then also how I encounter sometimes in schools when I'm working with educators that they feel like this type of work is tracking students. Talk a little bit about how truly your aptitudes are who you are, and they can be leveraged and aid you in moving towards something versus it's tracking.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. So personally, I'm one of those people who I don't like being tracked,
Yeah.
by per se. But at the other side of that, there's this old saying, which is a true saying: what gets measured gets improved, right?
Mm. Hmm.
Now, if I am built into a system that says grade levels, and there's A grades and there's D or F grades, I guess, and you fall into these camps, then you have this mindset that everybody is deterministic, right? You either
Hmm.
are or you're not. Whereas if you say, here's your potential, which is what we're saying to people, and your potential is actually not one career, it's these are your aptitudes. And here are a vast array
Hmm.
of options that aren't all in the same area. They're in different career fields, but they all leverage your aptitudes. I've now opened up opportunity for you rather than narrowed it down. And in this age of AI, I think this is particularly important. I've been asked this question a few times, like, well, if AI is going to take, let's use computer science or computer programming, that's one of those jobs that people are really nervous about with AI because,
Hmm.
the people who are developing AI are developing it first and foremost for their own field, which is to leverage it to do more coding, faster coding. So programmers across the board legitimately are concerned about what they're going to do. But if I label myself
Hmm.
as a programmer, so this is you're an A student in programming, right? Okay, well, that's different than you have the aptitudes to be a great programmer, but you also have the aptitudes to be a great engineer over here in this area, or you have the great aptitudes to do something different over here. And instead, if I label myself with what I am naturally talented with, and knowing that there is no right or wrong answer there,
Right.
then I'm opening myself up. And so instead of being a programmer, I'm saying, okay, what do my aptitudes do for me? Where can I move my career around? I may not have to move, 180 degrees away from programming. I may be able to just move, 3 degrees over. And now I found a career that's great with AI and doing it wonderfully, right? Or shift over here a little bit further, but it's still leveraging my aptitudes, taking
Yeah.
advantage of who I am, taking advantage of the skill sets that I've developed over a lifetime. We just give too little credence to those types of things. So
Yeah.
thinking about ourselves differently changes that vision there.
That's a perfect answer to when people ask me that or make the claim that we're tracking people. So I'll be able to just play that segment right there. I mean, that's just
Good.
you said it perfectly. I mean, it is a piece of the how we have this, find the solution for the navigation gap. But one of the things also that we have is an exposure gap, experiential gap. The opportunities don't exist within our schools for the exposure, for the experiences. Talk a little bit about, why have we come to those gaps existing in our educational system, and then go ahead and lead right on into how YouScience can be the part of that solution.
Yeah, you bet. I think part of the reason why is because over the last 100 years, but certainly over the last
Mm,
70 years, we started looking at education for education's sake, right?
mm,
Uh,
mhm,
we wanted a well-rounded individual. You and I were talking earlier. Your father was a long distance or a truck driver. My
mhm,
dad was a long distance truck driver. And a lot of people would have said, again, vocational versus academic, there's somebody who's not well-rounded. I don't
mhm.
know anybody that was more well-rounded than my dad. He could
Agree.
he
Yeah.
could
Same.
talk with philosophers and he could talk with mechanics, right?
Mm,
He could talk with business people and he could talk with somebody who was fixing his sink equally as well. That was a well-rounded individual, right?
mhm,
And so this
mm,
idea that education for education's sake makes us well-rounded is just it's a falsehood that's never really proven out. What is proven is that as we get somebody engaged in what they do well, they want to learn more, not less. They
mhm,
want to go deeper. And that
mhm,
typically drives them into other roads, right? It doesn't just drive them down into one deterministic factor. They start to expand their horizons, not narrow their horizons. And that's
mhm,
true across the board. So, what we need to be doing is trying to drill and dive more into that as we start to look for how we encourage people to branch out and move into these different directions. Now, as we start to do that, I think one of the ways that we really help is by expanding that horizon, excuse me, and
mhm,
connecting all the pieces together. One thing is true, which is again, we all have these different aptitudes. Some of us can connect pieces really well. It actually is one of the things that I do pretty well is I have a high aptitude for seeing things in my mind and how all the pieces fit together and how I can construct a system to make sure that those all come out. It's probably why I'm a good CEO, right? And a good entrepreneur. And so
mhm,
that helps me in that way. Um, but some people can't do that very well. Okay, that's all right. What we need to do is help all of those people map out the pathway better so that they can get to that end point. By allowing us to do that and to focus that better and better as educators, as parents, and others, that's where we start to see the gains
mm,
at
mm.
dramatic rates across the board. Did I answer your question good enough? Or
No, it does. It does. I mean, it lies within the work we have to do within our classrooms. But the other part of it is this. and this is just the nature of us being educators, and I totally get it. I mean, it's part of human nature, I think. We need to lean into some type of a resource to be able to help. Um, part of part of what we're talking about here for the last 3 years, I've been trying to help teachers go deeper with trying to find a career community connected process for students and character traits, values, problems you like to solve, and your aptitudes are the key areas. And just having the conversation with students or having some type of a document to work from just isn't enough for educators. I mean, which I understand. I respect that. What you guys have developed and what you're developing is a tool that really pulls it all together. And
Well,
it's what you need.
yeah, one thing that is so unfortunate that we expect our educators to know
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
right? And it's just impossible, right? I mean, we ask our career counselors or our general counselors to help guide students to all of the different options that
Mhm.
student knows. Well, as an individual, I can barely name 10 universities off the top of my head,
Right.
let alone all of the different majors those schools have, let alone all of the different careers that are potential out there, let alone all of the businesses that could support that type of
Right.
individual.
Right.
So when it comes down to me as a counselor, I go to the well of knowledge that I have, and which is very finite. And that's not a knock on those counselors. They are awesome. They
Right.
came into that profession for a reason, but it wasn't to know everything, right? I think we see these movies like the James Bond movies and believe that there's somebody out there that really knows something about everything. And it just doesn't exist. And
Hmm.
so what we need to do is arm people with better tools and then help them leverage those tools in the appropriate ways, give them the time and the space they need to leverage those to maximize their effectiveness. And we've done a pretty poor job over the years. Again, going back to the same reason that we talked about earlier, we've just put such an artificial time pressure on educators to do these thousands of things, but it's all just arbitrary. I mean, it's half made up from somebody at a legislature that was 100 years ago that created a law that now we're following that doesn't apply anymore. Yet we still do it today, right? We need to be able to step back better and say, okay, as a professional counselor, what are the tools that will really help you do your job well? And are we
Right.
giving you enough space to do that? And part of it, I love what you guys are doing because connecting it to the community is critical to that
Mhm.
success. Not just for the student. We know the gains that happen if you can connect a student to real world outcomes, the gains are enormous. But for the educator, they want to know that what they're doing is valuable work.
Mhm.
They went to the years of schooling to do all of this, to a lot of times earn less income because they wanted to make a difference. But if they're locked up and not being able to see the difference that they're actually making out in the community, it's kind of heart crushing, soul crushing. So if we can connect that better to the communities, all of a sudden we're lifting the spirits of our educators to getting them back to feeling great about what they're doing because what they're doing is so critical. But man, we don't let them see that very often.
Yeah.
That's a tragedy.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. The other thing that comes to my mind regarding it is um, a lot of our students that don't have the resources, right? They don't have the resource dominant opportunities that exist in some homes.
Yeah,
And so now we're offering something that is going to be a resource that can close that gap,
yeah.
right?
But it makes such a big difference as well. And I love that I mentioned at the beginning that what we're trying to do is help every student have those capabilities and understanding because every student deserves that. And not only that, one of the critical things that we miss sometimes as educators is
Hmm.
how our work impacts the rest of our society. Now
Hmm.
we understand it conceptually, but here's a simple fact: we do not have, quote unquote, enough workers in the United States, and our population is going down, right? So that's
Hmm.
causing a huge economic burden on our society. Now, when you really, and I said quote unquote, because when you drill down into the numbers, economists have told us we actually have enough individuals, but only if we are directing those individuals into their highest and best use.
Right.
If we continue to just let people go outside of the education
Right.
system and flounder, to your point, it took you, you know what, 20 years to
Yeah.
find your passion, find where you really fit. That's 20 years too long. We can't
Yeah.
afford that. As a nation, we will suffer if we do not solve this problem. So, by actually giving the educators the resources that they need, helping tie those things together with our community, we're actually solving not only the problems that we have in our education system with our students and with our parents, but we're solving the economic
Yeah.
problems for our nation.
Agreed. Very, very well said. Yeah. Before I go in and go into asking a little bit about, what's next with YouScience, I do want to say thank you for the comment about your father. It made me think myself. I just, I said my dad was an over the road truck driver for over 60 years, but he was the smartest guy I ever knew. And it's just when you started talking about that, it just brought back great memories. And I'll be honest, I'd be sitting here in a denim shirt myself. So I really respect who you are at your core. You are just an outstanding gentleman. I really, really mean that. But all
Thank
right,
you.
um, what's happening with YouScience as you move forward? Give us some of the ideas, some of the new pieces that are going to be a part of it.
Yeah, you bet. You know, where we're going, I think the best way to kind of envision you science now and into the future is that personal counselor that is
Mm,
able to put their arm around an individual and on a very individualized basis and say, you know, Edson, who are you? What's
mm,
going on in your life? Okay, let's understand your aptitudes better. Okay, let's understand your interests too, because interests are important,
mhm,
but they need to be put in context. Okay, what's your life experience? Okay, let's take all of that information and let's make some choices about where you could go. How do these look to you, right? And again, we're just thinking just the same way we've been talking about, but
mhm,
with that personal assistant kind of helping you along the way. Now, as I make a new choice, and this is where we're kind of here with YouScience, but we're still not quite where the vision is. What should happen is as I make a choice, that now changes my opportunities in front of me. And today we kind of make it a little bit more deterministic. It's a little bit more linear, right? So
mhm.
here I want to follow an electrical engineering path. Okay, here's kind of the electrical engineering path in front of you. But the reality is life is a lot more nuanced, and me as an individual, I'm a lot more nuanced. And so, and there are way more jobs than electrical engineer. There's probably 10,000 electrical engineer type jobs, all with a very slightly different focus. And
Mm,
so every time I take a step forward, I would like this counselor to be able to say, okay, Edson, you've taken this step. How did you like it? What did you like? What didn't you like? What were the things that you could grow in? And be able to really analyze that with you and then say, okay, based on all that information and based on what you've told me, here's some new opportunities. Which one would you like to try? And let's say I try one and I come back and like, hey, that was the wrong one. Like, let's say I wanted to go down and become a surgeon and I started going and my personal assistant here said, hey, well, let's go job shadow somebody taking blood just for a little while, just a phlebotomist. And I go and I do that and I'm like, oh man, I fainted when I saw the blood start flowing through the veins
mhm.
there or through the tubing. Okay, all right, let's take a step back from that road. There's a lot of things that your aptitudes can apply to that don't have to lead to surgeon. There's a ton of things that surgeons
Mhm.
do that make them successful that you could do in another area. Let's explore some of those. So take a step back and go down another path. And every step of the way, start to do that. And then as you start to grow, right, you start to get into your high school years. Okay, well, there are jobs out there that could take advantage of this. I think the worst thing that educators and parents do this too, a lot of adults do, they say, go get a first job. Well, what's that first job? Well, go just get a job at a grocery store. Go get a job at a fast food. Not that those are bad, by the way. I think that
Right.
they're excellent jobs if they lead to your future, right?
Right.
So, like, I had a daughter who her aptitudes actually lined up with what she wanted to do, which was filmmaking. And so I said, okay, do you understand what a filmmaker really is? Film is about process, how to do things in the right order and doing things in the right way. I said, there's no better job for you than getting a job at Chick-fil-A. They are process masters,
Hey, good
right?
point. Yeah.
So go get a job at Chick-fil-A, not how to make chicken, right? Go there
Right.
to learn their processes. So if we got better at being able to point people to entry-level jobs that could take advantage of something they needed to learn to grow their career, that would be beautiful. I always tell kids that, if they want to get a job, go to Boeing. If they want to be an engineer, get a job as a janitor because you'll have the opportunity to rub shoulders with engineers. Not that you want to be a janitor, but it's exposing you to that world and that opens it up. So as this counselor, right, this personalized counselor that we see in the future, and AI is really helping us do this better and better. We're getting
Mhm.
really close to some cool breakthroughs. But that helps an individual. And what I see in the future is that we help an individual have this personal path, this personal counselor throughout life. And that tool can be there to help guide the next step and guide the next step and give options, right? So I look at it as continuously opening options, choosing an option.
Mhm.
Opening options based on your experience, then choosing your next step. So that really becomes the future here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really well said. Well, as we kind of come to the end of the pod, I really appreciate you taking the time. The other thing I wanted to say is thank you very much for sponsoring our Futures Clear Teach Like It's 2045 online conference. Really, it helps us out a lot. It's our second year. We've got a really good lineup, but thank you so much for being there for us.
Well, you're welcome. We're excited to do it. The work that you're doing is really fantastic. And these conversations need to be had more and more. So thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, we actually have a few friends, common friends that are involved in it, in Hans and Brett and Jason Van Ness, who is a huge advocate for YouScience also. So we're definitely going to take some time and highlight YouScience during the conference. So really excited.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
one last final question I like to end with everybody is in our tag, as you know, it's Teach Like It's 2045. So what do you think education is going to look like in 2045?
Well, I think I'll put it in kind of a simple format, maybe. I believe that we're going to have the very top educators around the
Mhm.
world be able to instruct uh, the very masses, right? And we will pay for the top educator experiences. Schools will be still very important, I believe, but they'll be very important to bring people together to work on those durable skills in
Like it.
particular. But then beyond those durable skills, it goes back to what you and I started talking about at the very beginning. It's really about experiential learning. And I hope that we will be able to get to a place where we put a lot of brain power towards what are the types of experiences that we could construct
Mhm.
for a group of students at whatever age group they are to learn the skills that we want them to learn. So if we want them to learn basic math or language or different things, what's the experience that we
Mhm.
can put around that to help them grow in those ways? We know that every business that comes to us, the number one thing that they all want is durable skills. Have kids communicate well together? Can they think critically? Can they do, these things that a lot of times we take for granted, but they're very hard to teach in the way that we're teaching school today. If we're
Mhm.
teaching math for math's sake, we're not learning how to communicate with people.
Right.
And that's even true in English class or in this class. But there are ways to do this. We just need to put more time and energy into thinking about how do we construct these experiences to get the outcomes that we want. And
Mhm.
so I think by that period of time, we will have school systems that are set up to get the very best education experiences from the top minds. Of course, AI is going to be very personal, so we'll be able to personalize that education in a very profound way, which I think is important. But we also have to get kids away from those screens enough to develop the skills that are human related. And that experience helps to build those things. It's one of the reasons I actually believe, Scott, your father, my father, and a lot of the greatest generations, they were that greatest because they were forced to interact with people in very real ways. They had to survive in different times. They had to learn to make do with little. And so those experiences of working in community, working on hard problems together, grew a sense of themselves that they could accomplish things. And you may say, or not you, but somebody may say, well, your father was a truck driver. He didn't amount to much. Well, I would say otherwise.
Right.
I would say my father was a great father, and he taught me a lot. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants because they taught me something that I needed to know. And I think that we can get back to that in a more sustainable form, but it will take a lot of us thinking hard about how to construct it. More time up front, less time in just the rudimentary doing of things.
Love it. Yeah, totally agree. Very, very well said, by the way. Thank you again for joining us. If people want to get in touch with you or YouScience, how can they do that?
Yeah, you bet. My personal email address is really simple, and I've welcomed people to communicate with me directly. Edson, Edson, it's a little bit different of a name, but Edson.Barton, Barton, at YouScience.com. So you can reach me that way. But our website, youscience.com, all one word, youscience.com, is the best place to go and learn more about what we do. And we've got some of the best people to talk to on the planet. We really do have a great company, and they're just wonderful to talk to. So feel free to reach out and just have a conversation with them to see if we can be of help in any way.
I would agree with you 100%. I've been working with Art and a few others at YouScience. You guys have been great people to work with, so I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, just the best people in the world to work with.
Good people. Yeah, thanks again, Edson, and keep up the great, impactful work that you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you so much, and likewise, you're doing great stuff.
Thanks, appreciate it. As we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care, everybody.